Morning, everyone. My name is Lorin, and I'm so delighted to moderate this, what I think will be a very exciting panel on new voices in the future of food. I mentioned my name is Lorin. It's Lorin Fries. I founded and run an impact advising firm called FutureTable, focused on food systems change and how we can achieve the impact that we want in food and climate systems. And as I look across these brilliant panelists and the businesses that they have created and that they're running, I think that they are part of the solution. I think that you'll agree with me that they represent some of the talent, some of the ingenuity that we need to correct some of the challenges in our food system and create profitable businesses. So we'll talk today quite a bit about food systems change, about creating the future of food that we want, and just wanted to set up for a couple minutes here before I invite our panelists to speak. What do we mean by that? What do we want in our future food system? And essentially, I think it's four main things. We want our food systems to be more nutritious. We want them to be more environmentally regenerative. We want them to be more equitable, and we want them to be more resilient. And we could point to any number of statistics or examples where current food systems fall short of these. I think as we hear from our panelists and as we understand more about their business models, we'll see that they're offering a lot of the solutions or a lot of the pathways to those North Stars that I've just mentioned. So without further ado, I'm going to start just to my left with Ajay and ask each of these panelists, could you please introduce yourself and tell us how is your business changing the future of food? So Ajay, please go ahead.
So yeah, originally I'm from India, where the food landscape is just very different from what it is here. The kinds of food that I used to eat was different. Eventually, I got into sustainability after watching Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. Moved to the States and started working on sustainable food systems. So my current business is actually about tracking the impact of food, specifically the climate impact of food, and helping retailers understand the impact of their entire product range. So 50,000 SKUs, sometimes 500,000 SKUs, or stock keeping units or products, and helping them make better decisions, helping them communicate this impact with consumers and helping the consumers make better decisions. The point is, if purchasing behaviors and patterns change, it actually sends a message upstream in the supply chain. And what this does is this actually induces change in the food system. So if consumers change purchasing behavior, retailers want to sell better products. If they want to buy better products to sell, brands have to make better products, which means it goes upstream all the way till the farmer. So that's what we're trying to enable with GreenSwapp. My business is called GreenSwapp AI. We use a lot of AI, so we deliver this data into the decision-making platforms, and that's basically what we're trying to do.
Thanks, Ajay. So inspiring. Let's go to Hiro and hear from you.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Hiro Tanaka from Japan. So I think my position is a little bit unique here. So I'm not doing the specific product or services. So my company name is called UnlocX. So which means unlock the potential of food. So I actually started my career at Panasonic and spent 8 years also McKinsey, and then more like a consulting background. But what we do now is, so we actually create a community in Japan. So I have started SKS Japan. It's one of the biggest food conference in Japan, and together with Mike, so he's a organizer of this conference. So, and also we do insight creation and also dissemination. So we actually do the insight hunt. We visit many conferences all over the world, or even in Japan. And then also we wrote about the book, Food Tech Revolution, which is one of the best-selling books in Japan. And also we do create a food innovation map to map out all the food innovation stuff, so which can be downloaded on my LinkedIn. Also I oftentimes help startups, large corporations as a member, not as a strategic partner. So I actually play some role as a non-executive director at some startups in Japan. So actually what we do is, so really like to create or nurture the community, so to drive the food innovation. So how we change the future of food. So actually we see that food has a connection with various social issues, and also food can make people happy. And then when we took, however, so making things happen is really tough. But when we take a look at the situation, so there are so many existing players who has a technology or who understand the value of food, but we actually need to bring all the people connect. So what we do is bringing all the key stakeholders in one place, connect, and then we sometimes facilitate that to create a project. So that's what we do. And then so I'm really excited to speak with you guys.
Thanks, Hiro. Building food innovation ecosystems in Japan. I know we'll hear more about that in a moment. Let's go to Joni.
Hi, everybody. It's an honor to be here today. And I'm Joni Kindwall-Moore. I traveled here from northern Idaho. And I got into food systems work after a lifetime of working in food systems in one way, shape, or form. I grew up in rural Oregon, farming timber, fishing, and went into hard sciences and was a researcher looking for how to really crack the code on medicinal compounds, and realized it's in our food, not just in a pill. And so I ended up going into healthcare. I was at the bedside for many years, and again was like, okay, 60% of people here in my ICU today are here because of what they ate. So I left healthcare and founded a company called Snacktivist to try to get very proactive activism around food systems reformation, and really aligning market with what needs to happen in the field to create healthy, sustainable foods and to elevate overlooked crops that have significant climate impact. So I founded Snacktivist and quickly realized without technology, I could not ever communicate the value proposition of what we were building at Snacktivist, which is transformational from a value chain level, but also from a health standpoint. And so ended up co-founding a technology company called Viiision. My Viision team's here today with me, and we are removing the friction between the data, the impact, and the story so that we can cultivate consumer trust and really tell a provocative story that is not only meaningful, but data-driven, so we can participate in these emerging value layers that are coming into food systems, like whether it's from carbon credits or other ecosystem service credits, just great storytelling, nutrient density, or even things like true cost accounting. So that's where I live, and that's my passion and what I do every day.
It's so cool that you have that 1 foot in the food sector and 1 foot in the tech and innovation sector in the media and storytelling space. It's a powerful,
delicious roller coaster.
Yeah, a delicious roller. Did you say a delicious roller coaster? I love that. Perfect. Well, that's I think what we're all part of today. So let's go to Sumati. Let's hear from you.
Hello, my name is Sumati Sharan Stewart. I am the founder CEO of Ladle. So Ladle is an AI-driven cooking personalization platform. So we are building a best-of-breed platform. So what that means is for consumers, what we are doing is our focus is millennials and Gen Zs. We're helping them cook more at home. And how we are doing that is, you can tell me, most of you millennials and Gen Zs, where do they get their inspiration? Anybody want to answer that? Yep, they go to creators and influencers on social media. Over 70% of them get their inspiration from TikTok and YouTube. So we are building these relationships with creators and influencers, and we're taking content from them, right? They create the best content, we take that content, and we have it in a pliable form where consumers can then personalize it based on their preferences. So their dietary preferences, languages, diets, localization, and other parameters. And at the same time, what we are doing is we are working and empowering brands. So those will be kitchen brands. It could be ingredient companies, it could be appliance companies. They take our libraries of recipes and then they can personalize it based on their product. Again, whether it's an appliance or whether it's an ingredient, and they provide that to their consumers and thereby getting greater loyalty and engagement with their consumers. So for me, I have 20 plus years of operator experience, having worked for companies like Amazon and Intel. I've taken a lot of smart home AI and IoT solutions to market. I bet you all have heard about Alexa, turn on the lights. I was responsible for building out that ecosystem. So really excited to be on this panel with all of you, and want to take this food journey forward and help both consumers and brands build that journey with each other and have food become an integral part of our ecosystem. Thank you.
One of the aspects of this panel that I got so excited about as we were preparing is the diversity of the businesses that you're hearing from, of the life experiences of the folks in front of you. We've got all different types of diversity: gender diversity, age diversity, life experience, geographical focus. So I think part of what we're trying to do here is demonstrate the power of that diversity. And I think one of the cool things I heard in both Joni and Sumati's story, among others, is a real pivot in their career from what they were doing into the food tech space. And I wonder, maybe Joni, I can go to you, and then Sumati after that. Tell us a little bit more about why food tech? Why did you choose, of all the places that you could put your energy and put your investment, why this space, and how did your journey lead you here?
That's a great question, because at the end of the day, like, I'm one of those kids that grew up, like, cooking was critical to my lifestyle. We lived a subsistence lifestyle. We grew our own food in our garden. We harvested our own fish. And so I always had a really close connection with food systems and really understood that we're a part of nature and they're a part of nature, and food is where we convene at that, like, sacred spot. And as I grew up and left, I realized that that was a very unique upbringing. Most people feel very disconnected from food. Most people feel very disconnected from each other. And food is the one place over a meal where you can get people from very diverse backgrounds, maybe even contrary positions in, about politics or social or whatever, and they can get along over food. Like, food brings people together, and food is also where humanity and, like, our future on this planet come together as well. Food systems contribute to over 30% of greenhouse gas emissions. Food is a driver of disease and GDP, spending on healthcare, lost productivity, and then poor outcomes when it comes to mental health as well. So for me, it wasn't a choice. It was just like a natural place we have to heal if I'm going to leave the world that I want to leave for my children.
Thanks. Sumati, tell us a little bit more. You mentioned your operator experience. You mentioned companies that don't necessarily have much to do with food. Why did you choose food?
Yeah, I did make a big pivot, didn't I? So, after I left Amazon, and about a year before I founded Ladle, I was thinking about what do I want to do next. Talked to lots of companies, a lot of big, large tech companies and startups, figuring out, okay, what do I do next? Wanted to take my experience, have significant experience, wanted to build something with scale, but I also wanted to have a purpose, and I also wanted to be passionate. I wanted to be excited to wake up in the morning. So I decided to start Ladle, but there was a reason for that. And my inspiration is my son, Ryan. So Ryan has a lot of food allergies. And a few years ago, when I was raising him, after a long day at work, I would literally tear my hair apart. What do I give for lunch tomorrow? What do I give him for snack at the soccer practice or a birthday party? I don't want to just give him popsicles, right? So really wanted to kind of go into that. And every night it was a lot of work for me. And that's what I want to solve for others and other families. So that's where I made the pivot.
That is such an important story, because it's an epidemic that affects over 20% of households in America today. Yeah. And so there's a lot of innovation around that pain point.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm glad you're pointing to some of those broader challenges around nutrition. I mean, if you look at the global statistics, about half of the world's population can't afford a healthy diet, right? We talked about the interplay of climate change and the agri-food system. We know that our sector contributes to 30% of all greenhouse gases. So all of you are working on these big challenges from different perspectives. Hiro, you want to come in?
One thing. So actually, I'm from high-tech background. So typically, technology people wants to bring tech out. So how we can use the technologies. So everybody wonders where is the application. But I think so. Yeah, responding to Joni's comment. So food is an inevitable place. So for us. So therefore, it's really natural to use any kind of technologies. So that's the reason also for me to pivot my career to food tech space, food innovation space. So that's just what I want to share.
Yeah, Sumati talked about purpose and passion, and you're talking about technology. And one of my principles for my own work is that innovation can be directed more fully at the hairy challenges of our time, right? Innovation for a purpose, right? Tech for good. And I think we're seeing how tech plays a role in all of your businesses, as a supercharger, right? As an enabler, but also as a proponent of scale. Here, let me come back to you, because you have been working on really building out the food tech innovation ecosystem in Japan, almost from the ground up, through SKS Japan, and others. So what insights do you have from that region and from that process for us?
Yeah, thank you. So Actually, since we have started SKS Japan 2017, and then so we have been supported many actually players. But what we see recently is that there are big momentum now. So even in Japan, also from Japan. So some quick facts is so the participants of Smart Kitchen Summit Japan has grown from roughly 180 to 1,200 over the last 7 years. All people are just want to do the food innovation. And then second is, so as you mentioned, the diversity. So we have a really diversified participants. So typically when people hear okay, food tech, smart kitchen. So maybe you can relate to okay, food and beverage company or price companies. But recently we have players from real estate company or mega financial institutions or infrastructure company who have an asset to bring for food players. So I think more and more players are mingling with each other. And then also there are some we started a conversation with farmers or restaurant players. So food and agriculture or restaurant, somehow they are separate. But now, so each players are merging. So that's a really unique point. And then also, can you bring up my slides here? Maybe already? Yeah. Okay. So then lastly, the number of startups or large corporations are really increasing. As you can see here, even at this CES. So when we first came CES maybe 8 years ago, there were almost non-Japanese players. So but now, so there are 2 award winners like TechMagic or Coldroll. And then also when we go to the Japan tech booth, you have the Algal Bio. And then also yesterday we had some gathering with 20 people from Japan who wants to do the food innovation. So that haven't happened over the last 5 or 7 years. So I think the key learning for me to build the ecosystem is, so unlike US, so features a great funding ecosystem, or EU, who has a involvement of a government or European committee. So Japan is more like a community-driven innovations. So we cannot compete against in terms of the number of the startups, number of the VCs, but in each companies, there are very unique assets. Like for food companies, they have the taste design capability, or even non-food related companies, they have an asset so to leverage. And then even from cultural point of view, Japan has a traditional analog technology such as fermentation or preservation technologies or insight. So also diversity of foods. So I think, so in Japan, so what we see was, so Japan food innovation can grow as a community. So therefore, currently we see more and more like a shared project. So you mentioned innovation for purpose or innovation for shared purpose. So we start sharing the purpose across industries. So therefore, I think Japan is sort of facing the next phase of innovation. So to tackle the sort of a regenerative food system, so which looks like impossible to solve, but so making impossible possible. So through community approach.
Making the impossible possible. I love that. And I love your approach to building ecosystems. I used to work at the World Economic Forum and had their global food systems work. And we thought about food systems, I think, in many of the same ways that you're describing, not just the chain or the web of activities, from farm to fork and hopefully actually back to farm, that whole web, but also in terms of food being everyone's opportunity, right? Non-food assets, you're talking about those in fermentation, you're talking about real estate, you're talking about infrastructure, and the cross-boundaries, cross-sectoral opportunities of people coming in as collaborators and working together to build that ecosystem. So such cool work that you're doing there, Hiro.
It's a lot of challenges are there, but I think so we should really challenge ourselves to go beyond industry sector. So we need to go sort of holistic approach.
A holistic approach. Yeah. Terrific. Speaking of holistic approaches, Ajay, I would love to hear your insights. You're currently based in Amsterdam and have quite a lot of insights on the EU. You've also done a lot of work here in the US. As you are thinking about changing or influencing consumer preferences, as you're also thinking about how brands are talking to those consumers, what are some insights that you see, and what are some of the differences between those geographies?
Yeah. First of all, as Hiro mentioned, I'd like to add to that the fact that EU is driven by regulation. So innovation happens through regulation. That's what drives the market need. In the US, it's private capital, consumer demand. That takes precedence, and people are willing to innovate based on that. So this is a fundamental difference in how the innovation systems of these two regions work. And like you said, I've been living in Amsterdam for 10 years now. And before that, I've lived in the US for an equal amount of time. So these are the differences that I see in terms of how innovation in food and sustainability happen. And when it comes to consumer preferences and brand marketing and how brands talk about food, in the US, it's heavily focused on convenience, ease of use, ready to go quick meals, a lot of these kinds of attributes, things that make it easy to consume food and easy to cook and taste. In Europe, the conversation has really moved past that into nutrition and health and sustainability. And when I say sustainability, I specifically mean a few attributes which everyone seems to want to know about. One of them is plastic. Everyone wants to know, the impact of plastics, how much plastic is being used in the packaging. Is this good? Is it recyclable? Is it compostable? What do I do with it? I don't want to pollute the environment. The second one is just origin location. If you notice, if you go to France or Netherlands or UK, actually, if you go to any major retailer's websites and their online e-commerce website, origin location is one of the attributes that they mention when they sell food products, because people want to know. So, and these two attributes specifically are in demand by consumers because naturally they're the easiest ones to visualize. Plastic is tangible, and origin location it's easy to visualize it and say that, oh, this came from far away, it's got to have a higher impact. But the fact that they're doing that means that they're thinking of impact when they're purchasing food. And nutrition as well. So nutrition is another thing that's a heavy focus. Consumers wanted it. So again, the way, as it always happens, EU actually regulated this. And now in many countries, you just have to have Nutri-Score, which is on a scale of A to E. It's on all the products. So you can pick up, you don't have to see the nutrition table anymore or think of numbers. The EU, government, regulatory bodies have taken care of that and made sure that it's translated to an easy enough, like a consumable piece of information on the package. And the hope is that this will happen with sustainability too. We are trying to enable that by actually demonstrating to retailers and product brands that actually communicating information to consumers can be a good thing for the business as well. Of course, in terms of reducing impact, nudging consumers to buy better products is an obvious, solution in terms of, achieving their corporate sustainability goals or climate targets. But also for their business, most retailers ask us, why would we do this? Is it just for the climate? That is of course one of the reasons that they want to do it. But what I tell them is, look, most of the sustainable products, and this is a research study done by BCG and IRI, the market research companies. What they've done is they've analyzed millions of point of sale data and found that sustainable products or products with sustainability claims in every food category has a higher margin. So getting consumers to shift to better products is actually better for the business. They make, the basket sizes are bigger and they make better margins anyway. So they're slowly starting to understand that this is actually not just a, impact proposition, but it's also a business value proposition. And that's why they're actually making the shift to doing this. So the fundamental difference between US and EU is, the market need is driven by regulation versus consumer demand. And the focus is on, in the US, it's on ease and convenience. In the EU, it's about some of these more, other aspects such as nutrition and sustainability as well.
I remember I've done some recent travel in Europe, and I remember picking up those products and looking at those nutritional scores. And if it had an A, I was like, okay, great, very proud, bringing it to the cashier. And if it didn't have an A, I was like, I don't know. It was definitely had that behavioral impact on me. So thanks for sharing those insights. Let's talk about barriers. This is a panel about new voices in the future of food. That means that all of the brave people in front of you are creating and forging forward with businesses that are relatively nascent. And I'd like to talk about barriers both on a more individual level, what have the founders of these companies faced as they try to fundraise, as they try to gain traction, but also some of the structural barriers as we see people really trying to shift the broader paradigms of how the food system works. So let me go back to Sumati first, and then Joni. Any reflections on your own personal journey as founders, doing all the things that it takes to get your businesses up and running?
Thank you. So I could actually focus on the fact that as a woman founder, we have barriers, right? Only 15% of tech founders are women, and very little as 2% of VC funding goes to women. But actually, I'd like to move the conversation further than that, because that could actually take over the whole conversation we have. And what I'd like to talk about is a little bit of the macro factors, specifically around our business. So what we are doing is we are building a solution, which is AI personalization, right, for cooking, for both brands and consumers. So the brands we're talking to, they tend to be very brand specific, right? They want their brands in front of the consumers. They want their walled gardens. And that's really what's important to them. Whereas consumers, specifically the ones we are focusing on, the millennials and Gen Zs, they tend to be brand agnostic, right? They tend to use a lot of appliances, a lot of different ingredients, and they want all these things to work well together. And so it's having to convince the brands that actually being part of an ecosystem makes more sense, because more the consumers use what you're building, the greater the adoption is from the consumers, the better everybody does. So that is actually the challenge we are facing. So good challenge to face, and hopefully we can convince them.
Yeah, because there are a multitude of barriers in this industry. I mean, it's really exciting because Viiision is a founding team of 3 women. We have the only woman-owned Layer 0 blockchain in the world. That's pretty cool. And we're from Idaho. So obscure upon obscure statistic happening here. And that's really exciting because we think outside of the box. We're thinking differently on so many levels. And Idaho is a natural resource state. I mean, we have a very low population, and we provide a lot of food and timber and resources for the rest of the world. And, when, like this mentioning of this shift away from this branded content silo or this ultra segregated, centralized, dominant landscape, we actually have a huge opportunity for decentralization and to shift the food system to an anti-fragile model by having that biomimicry idea and concept around building resilient systems. Nature doesn't build in silos. Nature builds collaboratively. Nature defaults to decentralized systems because of long-term resiliency of the group or the population. And so we need to really think through this structurally. Like if we're building food systems and we're combining technology and we're combining innovation at the farm level, which I do because my company, Snacktivist, builds farmer-connected supply chains from scratch. And that is a challenge that is formidable because the food system is by default very siloed and very private, and there's not a lot of visibility. So we're really pushing boundaries in a significant and in a world-shaping way in little old Idaho with, combining something as powerful as a Layer 0 blockchain with the building of farmer-connected supply chains that will pull through that connected story of impact at the soil level, impact through processing in the value chain, shortening the value chain, and ultimately impacting human health and the planet through transparency.
And I hear in your answer also that resiliency factor that we talked about. I mean, we've just been through a pandemic where, and multiple crises in the world, like the war in Ukraine, have spiked prices of food. They've broken supply chains. 112 million more people were pushed into food insecurity between 2019 and 2022 because of these factors. So there's fragility of our food systems, and you're talking about actually how do we build that resiliency. I know that
Yes.
you focus on millets and you focus on other underutilized crops, diversifying what we grow and the
Yes.
communities of practice around how we
Well,
grow. Do you want to say any more about
Yeah,
that?
because it's just so timely, especially with Ajay's comments also about profitability and margins. Like Monday night, I flew here yesterday morning, but Monday night I spent it with a group of farmers at our Pacific Northwest Direct Seed Association conference. And they were like, you have to help us. No one is representing farmers that are working with diverse crops. There are not paths to market. There is no access to decentralized markets to fuel this regenerative movement that doesn't have a lack of farmer interest. What it has is a disconnect to markets. And when we understand and we can articulate and bundle and monetize this complex value chain and truly see it for what it is, there's huge opportunities to create efficiencies. There's huge opportunities to make a more profitable food system, but we need to make sure the profit is going to the people who are making the high quality food, not being sucked up in the middle of all these layers that don't contribute to the nutrition and don't contribute to the environmental stewardship.
When you're talking about a regenerative movement, I was really struck as someone who pays a lot of attention to what's happening on the international stage that last year at the big United Nations climate conversation, food was represented for the first time in a full way. And actually 160 or so countries around the world, US among them, China, Brazil, Argentina, EU, made a commitment actually to integrate food into their climate plans, including through regenerative agriculture. And let me use that as a pivot to you, Ajay, and thinking again about barriers. Your business is really designed to shift the marketplace. You're trying to change how things are produced and what gets valued in the marketplace by consumers. Could you talk a little bit about how you see those barriers and how you've navigated them?
Sure. So fundamentally for retailers, there are two sets of barriers. I mean, inertia is a tough thing to overcome. First of all, people have been doing things a certain way and they want to continue doing it that way. The saying, if it ain't broken, don't fix it, is what they're thinking. But the food system is broken. But for them, sales are happening, people are buying their products, so they think it's fine. But if you look at it from the buying side, from their purchasing side, the biggest obstacle that we're facing is they're afraid of burdening their suppliers with a ton of information requests. They keep telling us if we want to be very accurate in like knowing the impact of all of our products and making decisions, purchasing decisions based on that, what coffee should we buy out of this set of, all the coffees available in the world and people that are trying to sell through us, which one should I pick, right? If you think of it from that perspective, what they assume is that we'd have to burden all of these suppliers with a ton of information requests to get to the accurate impact information. And that's one of the biggest barriers from the purchasing side, from the supplier end. From the consumer end, from the sales point of view, they're afraid that if they do communicate the impact of food to consumers will stop buying all the bad products, which might just mean like a loss of sales for them. So these are some practical concerns that we hear again and again from retailers. What if people actually just buy fewer products? I mean, obviously people are not going to eat less, so they're just going to shift purchasing behavior. But to convince them of that, that fact that people are not just going to reduce their purchasing, but they're going to shift purchasing, it's a tough thing to convince them because they think if we do nudge consumers and if it works, what if we lose, So from the retailer perspective, these are the two main concerns. From the consumer perspective, everyone is trying to advertise sustainability on their products. And they're using, of course, there's no international standard rules on, how to generate certifications, eco-certifications or eco-labels. So there are tons of them. And now there are so many that consumers are actually confused. They go to the eggs aisle and they'll see fair trade, organic, free range. all of them are good. You only want one pack of eggs. Which one do you buy, right? So there are so many such confusing labels and certifications that consumers are starting to demand something like price or nutrition that is across the aisle, across the product range, and you can compare anything with anything. So from the consumer perspective, this is the biggest obstacle. There's no single unit of comparison to actually pick better products.
I experienced this myself as someone who considers myself fairly savvy about environmental issues and food products, but I go into the grocery store and I'm just so confused about the eco-labeling. Do you think there's any progress being made on that front that you see?
I think the EU is again leading this in terms of regulation, just like how they developed a Nutri-Score to make the nutrition table standardized into a very easily understandable format. They're trying to do that with sustainability attributes, starting with climate. And the first step is to just get people to even start thinking about this and start reporting it internally. They're not forcing any companies to communicate it yet, but that's the hope, that we're slowly going to ease into it. So they've introduced this thing called CSRD, which is Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. All the companies have to report their emissions of their entire supply chain and all of their sales. Starting from this year onwards, 7 days ago.
Okay, well, steps being made forward on that issue, although of course it's so complex, the conversations that I'm privy to are saying, yes, there's carbon, but what about water and what about soil health, et cetera, et cetera. So complex issue. Let's talk for a moment, just briefly about technology. I mean, here we are at CES. All of your companies have either a basis in technology or technology plays a major role in how you do what you do. Hiro, let me turn to you, and then if we have a moment, anyone else who wants to pipe up before we come to a last round of questions. How does technology fuel the companies, either your company or the companies that you support?
Yeah, eventually, so technology, there is a bunch of technology which can contribute to the startups and also solving the food system issues and making people happier. So such as alternative protein or precision fermentation or cultured meat or precise agriculture, food robot personalization. So many technologies are there. So I think, so therefore, because we look at all the range of the innovation around the food. But one thing I really important is it's more like a mindset. So it's a little bit weird way to saying that. But because of my position, so many people ask me, so okay, Hiro, what is the technology expected to coming? So I think this is a wrong question. So rather, when we take a look at all the range of innovation, there are technologies you can leverage. So right question is, what technology we can leverage to make the better future? So in that sense, I think so looking at just the technology is not sufficient. It's more like we need to imagine the future. We have a right to create a future. I think this is somehow a little bit different way of answering to your question. But I think this is approach, so we communicate, we leverage technology.
I love that. Imagining the future that we want and asking how can technology be part of that future. Anyone else want to pipe in on technology's role in your companies?
Yeah, technology is a powerful tool. I mean, I have to say, as somebody who founded Snacktivist as a food innovation company and then, grew a brand in the CPG market, without transparency technology, it is impossible to truly tell a deep story, a meaningful story. It's difficult to cultivate very meaningful, long-term relationships with consumers. And it's impossible to meet them where they're at. We have to deliver the right story, the right data to the right person at the right time. And that is a technology challenge. And that's why I'm so passionate about developing these tools, because my company needs it, but I know so many other companies that need it too. And it's so beautiful to see this vision that has been built over many years. And now one of my friends who runs an incredible hummus company, and she sources all of her garbanzos from her father-in-law's farm. And I know the farmers as well in my work with farming. And now to see that story come to life on her packaging, that you can be in New York City and buy a package of her hummus, and you can scan that code and you're taken into a whole another world around the experience of that food. It stopped the hunger. it was convenient, but there's so many layers of value. And I think that's the most important point. I just want that to be a takeaway from this panel, is that food and agriculture is on the precipice of an incredible diversification of value. And the value will no longer be bushels per acre, dollars per bushel. There is a complex and nuanced value system at play here that is critical. And if we don't articulate that, if we don't track it, huge data sets, and we don't rapidly understand it through AI learning, we will not have a sustainable food system that can feed humanity in the future. So this is a critical and urgent call to action.
Our entire company was born because of the inability of the industry to calculate impact of, a massive amount of products manually. I mean, it usually takes about 6 months to calculate the impact of a product, and each retailer has 50,000 products. Each enterprise CPG brand like Nestle or Unilever has 75,000 products. And without technology, it just would not have been possible, especially some of these latest advancements in AI, which we really leverage to be able to calculate and automate this process of impact calculation. So technology is just crucial to our business, and we're trying to use it to not just solve the problem, but also deliver the data to decision-making points. In fact, if you come to our booth, you will be able to see these integrations. We integrate climate scores into price, like electronic shelf labels or price tags. We have set up a mini supermarket where you can see the climate score of every product. And you shop and you come bill with us. Again, on the receipt, we've integrated our data with the POS system. The receipt prints the climate score and tells you how good or bad you are. So we're trying to integrate it into points of decision-making, trying to make it easier for consumers and for retailers. So it's absolutely crucial, the role that technology has played in enabling this.
I love that you have an interactive experience at your booth, and I encourage people to go and experience it. Sumati, I'm seeing you want to come in, and as we really round out this panel, we're going to do a lightning round. Our goal is to inspire those of you who may not yet be in the food tech space to think about this space more deeply, or to broaden your insight if you're already in this space. So I've asked each of our panelists to think about if there's a piece of advice or a piece of inspiration that they can offer as we come down the line. So Sumati, if you want to integrate whatever you're about to say with that answer, let's start with you.
That's great. Thank you so much. So what I was going to say is we have 8 billion people in this planet today, and we will be 10 billion by 2050. That's a lot of people. We need to have a planet that's sustainable, and we also need to be able to provide food for all those many people. And I think as we are all talking about, we now have technology that can help us, in different formats. Yes, we can talk about AI, but that's one of the things that we can do with other systems also, the technology. And I think innovation now has come to a point where it can really make meaningful difference. I really believe that we have the ability to use technology to improve people's lives all over the world, all the way from sourcing food, bringing it to our kitchens, and then being able to take from our kitchen to being able to cook it so that people can do that in a fun, easy, accessible way to both have a healthy, wonderful life and a sustainable planet. And focusing on the personalization piece, the things that we are able to do, whether it is for personalized health or personalized cooking, we have an ability to do that we didn't have before. And I definitely think things like AI and generative AI and LLMs are helping us do that. So I look forward to all of us working together to creating a better world where people can all get the food they want and leave the planet in one piece to our children and grandchildren.
Thank you, Sumati. Let's go to you, Joni.
Yeah, so I think right now my takeaway is, really how we look at this system where agriculture and food and technology are having this nexus point, and really understand how to build systems that discover this underutilized value and help reward good behaviors in manufacturing and in production, rather than trending into more of a punitive structure. That's the one thing where reporting can have that kind of dirty downside where it's almost like a gotcha kind of a thing. And so one of the things that I think is really important for us today to think through, how do we do things like gamify our systems so that we're rewarding people and we're creating positive behavioral feedback loops in people at every point of the value chain, from seed and agronomy all the way through to the serving of like your coffee at the coffee shop. And how do we create that clear system that captures that experience and helps incentivize it for positive transformation?
Terrific. And just a couple of minutes left here, lightning round, Hiro and Ajay, your final thoughts.
Yes, for me, food is really has an enormous opportunity is a key takeaway. So it's actually, so we need food. So food is an inevitable part of life. Even at CES, when we listen to the keynote and the exhibitions, so there are some word around food. Or maybe you can imagine, oh, it can be leveraged to food industry, food innovation. So food is becoming the intersection of various industries, which creates a huge business opportunity, but as well as so we can make our life better by ourselves. So therefore, if you want to talk more, so we are waiting for you guys in Japan. So SKS Japan this year will be held in October, end of October. So let's see in Japan, and then we are looking forward to collaborating with you going forward. Thank you.
So I'll make this quick. I think as consumers, we really underestimate the power of our choices. It's in fact the single biggest signal that food companies look for when they want to make changes to, producing or designing their food products. So do think about, some of these issues when you buy products. When they say, vote with your dollar, it's actually true. It's the biggest thing that they look for. So any choice that you make does matter. So talk about this with your friends. Make better choices at the supermarkets. And, that's how you start the systemic change from like bottoms up.
So speaking of food choices, we're the last thing between you and lunch, and we've gone over because of this great conversation. Thanks to our inspiring panel. Thanks to all that you do and all the ways you're redesigning our food systems for the better. Thanks to the audience, and let's close out here. Have a wonderful day.